Hello. Hello to all of you joining. We're just going to wait for a few seconds as people join our presentation today. All right, that seems like a good number. Hello and welcome to another online presentation from Biometric Update. We discuss the hot topics and going issues in biometrics and digital identity. I'm your host and the managing editor of Biometric Update, Chris Burt. Today, we're going to discuss why facial authentication is ready for secure access control at scale. There's some significant innovations that have changed how biometrics can be deployed in access control over recent years. We're going to talk today about Edge AI and its implications for the sector with three insiders who bring perspectives coming from different angles. Joining us today are Mike Nielsen, CMO of RealSense. Hello, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We also have with us Alan Chester, who is founder and CEO of enterprise digital experience platform Any2Any, which Biometric Update readers may be aware was acquired by Dormakaba just a few weeks ago. Hello, and thank you for joining us today, Alan.
Thank you very much. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure. And also joining us, we have Fred Fisher, Global Growth Officer for biometric and smart card-based security and access control system developer and manufacturer One's Technology. Hi, Fred.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'd particularly like to recognize and thank our friends in the Gulf for attending. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, your families, and your colleagues.
100% very well said, Fred. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining us as well. I just want to mention very quickly that RealSense, for those of you who are not well aware already, makes integrated facial authentication solutions with on-device processing and depth sensing for liveness detection. One such solution is the RealSense ID Pro, which was just unveiled at ISC West. We're certainly going to be talking a little bit more about RealSense as we go, but before we get right into it, I would like to let everyone know that we've planned time for a few questions from those of you who are watching live at the end of the presentation today. Please use the Zoom Q&A function, which you'll find towards the bottom of the screen there. And additionally, everyone registered will receive an email following the presentation, which will include a link to a recording of the event, as well as links to connect with RealSense and its partners to find out more about what they can do to help with your access control needs. So without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by asking all three of our panelists today, maybe starting with Mike, what has fundamentally changed that makes facial authentication ready for secure access control at scale today?
There's two things from our perspective, one being driven by people and one being driven by tech. And then we'll get into some regulatory stuff later on as well, I think. Um, we're calling it the Apple effect. It's just the most polite way to put it. Everybody looks at their phone to get into a service. That has been consistent for years now. I mean, clearly it's gotten everybody conditioned to use themselves as who they are as their access.
Mm-hmm.
In the US, more recently, it's been the implementation of biometrics at airports. And it's kind of helped, stage one, the Apple effect is helped demystify it for you as a person. Stage two, at the airport, help demystify it for you, giving control to somebody else that isn't your trusted phone provider, essentially. Um, that has had a huge effect, right? We've been talking about it for a couple of years now, but it's been a huge effect on at least the American public in terms of their adoption and usage and beliefs about what biometric is. We're not going to get 100%. We may never get there, but we're really close right now. The second factor is that the tech has gotten really good. I mean, I'll talk about ours because I know ours really well, but some other folks out there in the industry do some great stuff as well. Once you cross a threshold of about 99.8% of what we call true positive rate, TPR, and once you drop down below a 1 in 100,000, 1 in 500,000, 1 in a million false acceptance rate, you start to see the efficacy of the platforms becoming robust enough to where they can work in lots of different conditions, which means that you're not having somebody not get into their apartment or accidentally letting somebody else into a building. And once you cross those two thresholds where those alarm rates drop significantly down to near zero, it removes the friction from the rest of the process. So those two factors, I think, from our perspective, have been really valuable, where people are used to it, friction's gone from the process. Now we're time for main scale.
For sure. And Alan, I'd like to bring you in there maybe on the friction piece of that and just how does what you're seeing in terms of people's digital experiences and their expectations about digital experiences align with what Mike just told us?
Yeah, I mean, to just it echoes essentially what Mike says. We really focus quite heavily on the people part, but obviously the technology aids us to do this. As Mike said, look, the acceptance of biometrics in multiple use cases and its acceptance that the user uses it every day, whether it be Face ID or other things, have changed not only the price metrics that people use to deploy it, but also the acceptance of the use cases, or the amount of use cases we can support, whether it be in secure presence or delivery or transaction. And more importantly, I think the execution of experience, which is the phone, is becoming much more versatile and flexible for us to use to put mobile wallet credentials, BLE credentials, do more challenge responses with the devices to change the experiences to enhance not only the security, but improve the experience. And maybe the last stream in this, especially from maybe let's say an access control provider world, is they're realizing that the confluence of physical and virtual security is coming together. You're bringing intelligence into the edge, which means the access companies are now also thinking, how can I have a conversation with the user in a different way? So they're more open for those, let's say, security profiles to be used in different ways. So it's an interesting space, but the main thing, which I think Mike said, is it's the user acceptance and awareness that biometrics can be used to open things, whatever that may be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good points there. And Fred, anything you'd like to pick up on there?
I'll just add on and pile on to what Alan and Mike said. Today's biometric algorithms and cameras are more advanced and affordable than ever, with capture devices costing half as much as they did 2 to 3 years ago. As an example, a $10,000 facial recognition device 3 years ago, they're now sub 3,000 with a lot more capabilities. Door controllers like our coming Vision X will be in the 500 range, which is on par or less than a card reader. So the cost of implementing into an access control system or biometrics in any situation, the cost is coming down significantly. It's like buying a 100-inch TV 5 years ago. It was in the thousands of dollars, and now you can get it for sub 1,000. I also think that improved operability with access control platforms and comprehensive solutions from providers address regulatory requirements, including self-sovereign biometrics. I think the future of biometrics is self-sovereign. We'll get into that later in the webinar. But again, like Mike said and like Alan said, hundreds of millions of global citizens are utilizing biometrics on their personal devices today. The broader integration of biometric technologies into personal devices has substantially enhanced the user acceptance.
Yeah, and very interesting too how that increased experience with biometrics on the consumer side is related to, technological changes that are also driving that reduction in cost, and so you get a few different benefits as time goes on there. I'd also like to ask, how are modern systems addressing spoofing? Of course, biometric spoofing, any sort of identity related attack, very significant risk factor. So, how do these modern systems address that risk and ensure reliable liveness detection in real world conditions? Mike, you touched a little bit on those real world conditions and how they're impacted by improving accuracy. Maybe you could pick up on the liveness side of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know other people's algorithms, so I can't really speak to them in detail. I can tell you how we do it, and then you can kind of infer from there where we think kind of state of the art's going. We've got a multi set of algorithms that are multispectral as well. So the way that we try to think about this is in three different dimensions. Number one, if you're showing a flat picture on a screen, that is clearly should be a no-go. So we need to do a 2D to 3D inference as a result. We need to understand if you're holding up a picture of someone else's face over your own face with eye cutouts and you can move your lips. Movement can't be the primary indicator of liveness. And masks, while can be very, very sophisticated, the underlying bone structure and musculature of a human being is going to be different whether I'm wearing an Alan Chester mask, which I recognize sounds super creepy, or if I'm just being me. So, not that I have an
I'm
Alan
glad we
Chester mask.
decided not to do that for the webinar. Yeah.
That's next week, not this week. So those three things, the 2D, 3D, and then musculature mapping, texture and feature mapping, they're all really important to do at different levels. And you've got to have some flexibility in how you do it too, because if you go for the maximal security, you are by definition you're processing more. It's going to take a little bit more time. If you're trying to let a kid get into their locker, it's a different level of security, right? So having that ability to modulate up and down, I think is really important. And again, it's really, really important. My favorite video I've seen, and I always go back to this, it's the joke's getting old, especially for Alan, because he's heard this before. But um, we saw a video, one of our customers showed it to us, and the individual walked up to a camera that was at a door, it was at an entry door. And they looked at the door, and of course, it was going to let them in. But there on the side wall next to him was said, "Do not let these people in the building." And he pulled one of the pictures off the wall and he showed it to the camera, and the door unlocked. So clearly, that's like the lowest bar we want to cross. But the highest bar you want to cross is again like a really high-end $25,000 mask. To a human being, we can't tell the difference. In fact, once people become more than about 65% similar, the human eyes can't detect differences unless you actually know the person really well. But computers can. So having that variability across again those multiple dimensions with a whole bunch of different text sitting underneath it is what you need to get to drive to get there. And you need to have a level of confidence that you can't spoof. There's testing facilities like iBeta and others that will do level one, level two, level three. We cleared level two. We're going for level three, but we cleared level two. And then that gives you some confidence that after some number of dozens or hundreds or thousands of attempts, you're not able to spoof the device. Then you've at least got confidence that a third party has validated that your results are what you say they are.
Very good. So those evaluations based on ISO IEC 30107, really a go-to at this point in a lot of areas. You're certainly seeing financial services. They've kind of accepted the value of these kind of evaluations, and hopefully the access control industry is likewise aligned on the value there. Yeah, Fred or Alan, you want to chime in on the liveness side?
I will just say that we are a 100% RealSense shop in terms of cameras for our devices. So we rely on RealSense almost wholly for what Mike has laid out already. So I would have not much to add here.
Can I add something actually on your behalf, Fred?
Yes.
Only because in talking to your guys before, you do some really clever bits around knowing when to apply different algorithms. That's actually one of the fun things that you guys do on the back end is when in different kinds of security, because you guys have told me some crazy stuff about the environments that you're in. Some of those are we are applying every algorithm and we're doing it several times because they're in very, very, very secure facilities. So their implementations are going to vary. The tech underneath it is, we are what we are, but the implementation that you guys did was pretty clever.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
one of the things we do really strong vertical for us is data centers. So we have the ability for full access control in a data center down to each cabinet. And in those environments, we may use multi-algorithms depending on the security, the level of security. Um, that's one of the great examples of how we do what Mike said.
Yeah. If I may add maybe a non-specific biometric point, what I find very interesting is now that you have open devices in various different fields for the use cases to give you a correlation of challenge responses, multi-factor authentications, different location awareness. So in combination with, let's say, the access profiles, the phones, the technologies, the watches, the readers, the cameras, where you are, what your situation is, what the criticality of that particular place is. You can do a lot more intelligent correlation of a use case, which is where Fred's just was talking about, like data centers, where you can actually combine multiple devices in combination with the identification and authentication to give you a greater sense of security, and I would say some fallbacks. So that's again that physical and virtual security coming together that allows you to play about with different levels of security that you couldn't have done previously. And I think that's where this is fun in for us in this constellation, is the various devices and settings or spaces that we can use that create challenge responses, random responses, using cameras on the phone, using cameras from RealSense, the data center environments. These things are a lot of fun because it offers so much choice, and that's what's appealing to the customers.
I find that really interesting point, Alan, because it gets into how the deployment details actually are not just important from the perspective of sort of making the biometric work and the liveness detection aspects work the way that they're supposed to, but actually improving, getting additional value right out of the hardware and software that you have. So I'd like to sort of follow that line of thought a little bit further and. Maybe I'll go to you first on this, Fred. What does it take, looking across the ecosystem at like OEMs, at your integrators, the identity platforms, what does it take to successfully deploy facial authentication in, let's say, more challenging real world environments?
Well, there's a number of things that you need to look at in order to implement a biometric platform. One is you have to have a clear use case and goals. So you've got to set objectives on how you want to implement and what the objective is for implementing biometrics. The number one is usually enhanced security. Everybody with a facility today that uses a card and pin is not secure at all. A face is near 100%, and I said near 100%, of 100%, near 100% proven security, and you know who's in your facility. The other objective is to streamline access, and the other is data-driven insights, so you can figure out where people are, how they get through, when they get through. That's important in terms of objective. You need to look at constituency. Who are you going to use this for? You're going to use it for employees. You're going to use it for visitors. You're going to use it for vendors. You need to look at your access points. Is it for doors? Does a face pop a lock on a door? It's a great application, works well. Turnstiles and e-gates in some big corporate locations, vehicular access gates, guardhouses. You need to look at risk assessment. You need to conduct a thorough evaluation of potential risks, including data breaches, false positives, negatives. User privacy concerns should be one of your number one concerns in looking at risk. So, and then data privacy, which we'll get into in a question down the line. We'll talk a little bit about data privacy and how you need to comply with data privacy. But that are some of the highlights. You need to pick the right technology provider who can handle all of your needs. You need an infrastructure and integration into your existing systems that work well. And then again, one of the basic things with privacy is user acceptance. You need to communicate the benefits of the system to the users before collecting their biometric information and address their concerns and provide a comprehensive training on how to use it. User adoption and transparency are critical for success.
Absolutely. So a lot more going into a successful deployment than picking the right technology. Very important, but got to get all the details right too, right? So yeah, Mike, do you want to chime in on that from the device provider, biometric device provider perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways of looking at this. I'll just keep it kind of isolated to where we are. We focus we're an embedded thing. I got it. I have one right here. It's actually the size of a credit card, or small, like a one-fifth of a credit card. But we're an embedded device, right? So we're not building the access control system. We're not doing the direct PACS integration. We're not triggering servos. We're not doing any of the stuff on the back end that's hard to do from an infrastructure perspective. So for us, it's super important that it is really easy to integrate with a workflow. So obviously the successful deployment piece, like Fred was saying, it's all about user acceptance at the end of the day. If there's friction in the process, you kind of doom from the start. So to help minimize that friction up front, we make the onboarding easy. It's all via API. So we everything that we do is modern REST-based API driven, as opposed to some direct integration. Not that direct integrations are bad, but they're more fragile. So we do a very clear abstraction between enroll, detect, blacklisting, whitelisting, all those different things that we can possibly do, including the security controls, like what level of anti-spoofing you need, security acceptance thresholds, and things like that. So from an acceptance perspective, we make it easy for the developer to make sure that they're working towards a seamless both onboarding and frictionless pass-through exercise. That way we're not making it hard for them to adapt in real time too. Because what we do discover a lot with a lot of our customers, including ones and others, is they inevitably learn things after deployments 1 to 10, 100. And there's constant tweaks that have to be made to the systems down the line. And a one size fits all just doesn't work.
Absolutely. Flexibility is important. Yeah, Alan, you want to chime in
Just
there?
just to really of course, tagging on to what Fred says, let's talk about user acceptance. There's also a challenging point about user awareness. The awareness
Mm.
around biometrics and where their data is being held and what's being done is really critical to this. So I think what's been failed maybe in the past, I feel, with biometrics, especially maybe in Europe, is obviously the ability of people to trust the systems that are being used, but their awareness of what's happening with my data, which we're going to come into about privacy. But I think it's also a matter of when you are deploying is having a awareness of what is appropriate for that particular experience, where if you're doing capturing people's data and biometrics to, let's say, high level biometrics and passport scans to, let's say, just post a letter, that's not appropriate. If you are going to a nuclear power facility, that might be slightly more. So I think where some of the deployments I've seen, it's been either an overkill or a misunderstanding or a misjudgment, either, let's say, deliberate or not, of the awareness of the user, but the appropriateness of the use case or the security you're trying to push with biometrics. And the beauty of having this kind of scale up, scale down means that you can actually be a bit more sensitive to what the user needs, and that's I think is critical to any deployment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean it's a big investment. You want this security in place for good reason. It's important to have it, right? So it's important that these deployments actually work and work as intended. And as Alan just alluded to, and we've all kind of alluded to uh, more or less directly. The past of deployments in this space is, a little bit checkered. There have been certainly some very good examples of very effective deployments, and there are some examples we could point to that were maybe not so well advised. So we'd like to run a poll at this point to reach out to those of you watching today and ask about what kind of pushback you're getting. So the poll, which has just popped up here, you can just click any one of the options. What's the number one pushback you get from your management regarding biometrics adoption? Please interpret management as liberally as as seems appropriate. This can be stakeholders, whoever's holding you back. Is it integration? Integration complexity or difficulty? Is it a cost issue? Is it privacy? Is it onboarding? Or is it performance? We've got a second poll there. This one, an open-ended one. How do benchmarks like NIST FRVT, that's the face recognition vendor test, and PAD, presentation attack detection, so liveness assessments, shape the ecosystem and help organizations evaluate biometric security? So you could look at that like a quiz because Mike gave you part of the answer a few minutes ago. But I also would like to encourage all of you watching along to, let us know what you're finding with, with your deployments and your discussions about deployments. And yeah, maybe we'll just leave that for a few more seconds to allow people to to add their responses. While we do, yeah, would anybody like to riff on these questions or offer a little commentary on what they're seeing?
I'm gonna throw
I'd like
something
to
out. Oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead, Fred. Sorry, please.
go ahead, Mike. Sorry. I'd like to give an overview while we have time on data privacy and government privacy compliance.
Absolutely, yeah, we've got that coming up. So yeah, please, Fred, take it away, and we'll yeah, let's
So
get into the details here.
entities like corporations or anybody who wants to implement biometrics needs to ensure that legal compliance with cybersecurity, privacy, and biometric regulations like ISO, GDPR, BIPA use clear and straightforward user notice and consent methods like those we use from our technology partner Sal D'Agostino's ID machines, one of the leaders in the industry in notice and consent. Um, Today, in our world of biometrics today on the capture devices, we're using two modalities for capture. We're using one to N, where a library sits either on the device or in a cloud that allows a group of people, it can be 10, it could be 50, it could be 50,000, to access using that device. The other modality is one-to-one, which is the clear future. This is where you have to present as an individual something to the device that you are granting authority to use your biometrics. That's critical. We call this self-sovereign biometrics. There are a diverse array of credentials that can be used for one-to-one identification that you as a user present to a device. They could be a QR code in a digital wallet. It could be an NFC in a wallet, in a Google or an Android wallet. Displaying QR codes on your badge that you wear on property. Embedding the NFC into security layers on the badge, which ones does today with our new technology and our next badge. Uh, we won't talk about that on the call, but I can talk about with anybody who has interest. That's a digitally e-printed badge, e-ink badge that is a digital badge instead of today's plastic. Additionally, credentials such as passports, national IDs, driver's licenses, and even airport boarding passes may serve this purpose. We know that Mike said that this has grown significantly in the airport space. We can now use the boarding pass to implement one-to-one biometrics. Well, some of us know that, and I was one of the innovators behind the Star Alliance biometric program. So Lufthansa and their affiliate carriers, Swissair and Austrian, were using biometrics for over a year and a half now, or 2 years now. They were recently shut down by the EU and the GDPR office because it was one to many. It needs to be one to one, and by implementing a face into a boarding pass solves that problem because again, the user has self-sovereign biometrics where they control whether their face is used or not. And that permission is presenting your biometric to a device and matching it. Some feel that GDPR goes too far. I feel it doesn't go far enough. The storage of biometric data in most cases is unnecessary with self-sovereign biometrics one-to-one. That being said, GDPR under self-sovereign biometrics is bulletproof. Self-sovereign biometrics is bulletproof in that scenario. But self-sovereign biometrics isn't just a privacy philosophy. It demands a rethinking of the entire identity architecture and lifecycle. Right now, most deployments treat notice and consent, enrollment, credential issuance, verification as separate problems owned by separate systems. That fragmentation is where deployments fail to scale. What I feel the industry needs is what I believe is finally coming technically available is a unified governance layer, one where notice and consent is evident, understandable, digitally enforceable, where credentials are cryptographically bound and machine readable, and verification can happen across any touch point, physical gates, mobile, web, kiosk, without the identity ever leaving the user's control. That's not a distant aspiration at this point. The infrastructure and applications to do this are being built now, along with our joint solution, which combines RealSense, ones, any-to-any, and ID machines. We have addressed the security and privacy transparency requirements regarding notice and consent and have put the individual in control of the use of their own biometrics. without any storage anywhere else in the world but on their person.
Very good. So just to reiterate, and please correct me if I've mistaken here, Fred, the claim, the credential presents a claim to an identity. It presents the biometric and it presents the consent.
Consent and permission, yes.
And that in this way, that control is preserving the user's privacy. It is giving them authority. It's limiting liability and all sorts of resource use on the other side of things. So yeah, absolutely a very intriguing and promising concept. And we've been talking more and more about self-sovereign biometrics, of course, on Biometric Update as we go along. And I think we should continue to talk around that subject, but I'd like to close the poll now and have a quick look, if we could, at what those results are. Now, for those of you watching along on a recording, you can't see this, so I'm just going to read out very quickly on number one, the first question, the number one pushback that people are getting is on privacy. That's 32% of the 34 people who responded. So thank you to all of you who contributed responses. That's just ahead of cost, though, 29%. Very interesting, particularly in light of what Fred was saying earlier about falling costs. Integration and performance both get 15% each. So still statistically significant. Onboarding, another 9%. So several people are finding that their number one problem. Mike, I'd like to ask you first. Do you have any any immediate reaction to these results? Anything jump out at you?
Yeah, it's funny because that a lot of we're seeing this is coming in waves. Let me put it that way. As we all know, right? Biometrics had one wave of adoption, then we stopped. Then we did it again, then we stopped. And then we tried to do face, and everybody went, "Oh my God!" And then we stopped, and we stopped for good reason. Number one, because the tech wasn't there. Number two is because it was too expensive, and number three is because nobody figured out the privacy stuff. To Fred's point, I also agree GDPR doesn't go far enough. I think it needs to go even further, which will probably make people concerned. But having now that trifecta, so to speak, largely understood, we're kind of flushing out the backlog of understanding, if that's a fair way to put it. Because a lot of folks are still in their heads thinking, okay, I got it on cost. You guys are cheap. I know how to implement it, and it seems secure, but I haven't got the privacy stuff sorted out, so I haven't got a governance structure. Or I completely understand the governance structure, but I haven't figured out how to do the integration yet, and therefore it's too expensive. So none of that stuff surprises me. In fact, if anything, my big surprise is that the privacy component has dropped. I think we did a poll similar to this about a year ago, and it was like 60%. With a similar set of answers, I believe, were the preceded answers. So that part's surprising because it's happening fast. Actually, that's really good data because it's happening way faster than I think it did even just a couple years ago. So that's encouraging. Thank you for the data, guys.
Yeah, and interesting too. I mean, you could say that well, it reflects, that change may in part reflect an educated audience that is somewhat used to. But I mean, the previous data, you would think that would also include some of that same influence there. So. Yeah, so let's push further on the on-device side because I mean that's where the privacy rubber hits the road in a lot of ways, as Fred just alluded to as well. Um, but Mike, maybe you could delve a little bit further into how important on-device processing is and the role that it plays in protecting privacy, in holding down latency, and in preserving user trust.
Yeah, it actually, thank you. I was about to say it ties right back to the trust model, then you said it. So it is very specifically tied back to individual trust.
Yeah.
If I have to capture an image, transmit it to a cloud for processing, develop a template, transmit the template back down, I've introduced four additional places where there's a potential for data privacy concern, right? I won't say breach because it's not fair, but a concern. By doing the extreme edge level processing, you get away from all of the other issues around image transmission, uh, biometric data storage, everything else. And then Fred's got a whole bunch more detail on how they implement that makes self-sovereign identity even more secure. But at the edge level, so again, our example, because I know our tech, not other people's tech. We snap a picture, essentially, or just watch a video stream. We generate a template in real time on the camera. It doesn't go anywhere. Template gets generated, and then you have to hit it with an API to say, I want the template or I don't want the template. So the privacy controls are put directly back into the implementation folks, which makes that level of trust even stronger. And again, we don't do data storage at all. In fact, the template is just a template. I don't know who you are. If I've pre-enrolled you, then my camera will know who you are, but that's really all it comes down to. And it's not really a person at that point. It's a set of 82 points on a human face that measure distances that are, quite frankly, 512 floating point 16 numbers that can give you somewhere between 500 bytes and a kilobyte of data that is irreversible back to a human face. And most systems out there today have some privacy preserving techniques that do that, but by doing it at the extreme edge, get around's the wrong way to put it in a, in a regulatory context. I eliminate the potential for a data breach and eliminate the potential for PII exposure.
Well, that's what we want. And Alan, can you maybe bring in the any-to-any's perspective on you're looking at devices to choose between. What do you think when you see the on-device or don't see the on-device characteristic?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go to sort of the fuzzy, fluffy parts away before Fred can give you the data. But I think just from the user experience point of view, this entire process that we've achieved is very much familiar to the way a traditional passport control or something else would be done. I have a document that looks real, gets checked by someone who checks it and understands it and trusts this document. And I have user agency to share the data that is only required with an edge device, which again, I come to this idea of intelligence at the edge, which is really key to this. I have a data on a phone. It's in a mobile wallet. It's with me. It feels, I know it's virtual. It feels that it's with me. It's a sense of the perspective, and I share that device with something who doesn't know who I am, but trusts the file and the wallet that's on there, and agrees that that encryption, that device, is something I can look at. And as Mike said, it doesn't know who you are. It just validates that the device, the person in front of me, is actually matches the profile that I have on a phone. And I think the last piece, which I think is critical for this, is not only about speed and performance, is having that intelligence at the edge, that nothing's server-based, nothing's checking somewhere else. And this is noticeable not only in terms of the frictionless way we can drive people through spaces, but also gives a real big bonus to that trust paradigm that Mike was talking about, and saying, I have the data with me. And that increases adoption. So looking at the data, when I see a low friction in onboarding, it shows that we've got a great deal of user acceptance, user awareness of what we're doing, and which means we're on a very, very interesting, exciting path. And as long as we keep true to that, we'll be on a very exciting journey.
Chris, let me bring this full circle if you don't mind.
Please do, yes.
I'm going to share a document here coming to you. Hope everyone can see this. This is one's technology vision of governance in a one-to-one self-sovereign world. So up front, as I talked about earlier, is consent. Consent, again, is critical. It's digitally enforced, machine readable. We read documents, we read passports, we read driver's license, national ID cards. It's cryptographically bound. The next step is enrollment. It can be done on a device. It can be done on a mobile. It can be done on a web service. It can be done in a mobile app. We then issue a credential. That's a wallet pass. Again, it can be NFC, where I just present my phone. It could be a QR code in the wallet, the same as with a mobile credential. A QR on any device on a piece of paper can also work, or in a smart card. And then we verify either at the location with any of the various devices we have, a fixed device like Vision 2, a mobile device, always just scan a person's face, or on a Vision X. But all of these, the user presents their document, their issued credential to the device where nothing is stored ever, anywhere, any place but in the user's possession. I'll leave that up for a minute before I shut that down.
So, people watching along are, if you're not so familiar, or maybe even your first time hearing the term self-sovereign biometrics, of course, we're taking principles of self-sovereign identity here and applying them to biometric verification or authentication. So, so the concept of self-sovereign biometrics itself is, still it's something that I only started personally to hear about not so long ago. And actually, I would be, Fred, when did you start talking about this, or let's say hearing about it? Is it, is this a couple of years? Is this a half a decade? Is this a, longer? What?
Self-sovereign biometrics have been around, not in the mainstream, but have been discussed probably the last 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
It has come full circle and front of mind right now because of GDPR and other regulatory requirements. As I used before, the Lufthansa situation. Lufthansa shut down their most popular passenger product because it didn't comply with regulation. I can get them up tomorrow with self-sovereign biometrics. It's in discussion, but this is the future in moving forward. We've got to live with privacy. Before you do anything else, we have to live with privacy. Now, that being said, we still all operate in a one-to-N mode. One-to-N is still possible. We can store on device, we can store on RealSense, we can store in the cloud. That is still all possible. But this is a much cleaner. If you present this to a lawyer will say this is choice A as opposed to choice B. If that makes sense.
I mean, I can imagine a scenario where you might want both,
Yes.
like
The
a
scenario
super
where
high,
you might-
right?
Yes.
High security. We want to keep certain people out and make a point of who, noting who they are or something like that. Um, yeah. So, I think that's all very, it's very interesting, area of conceptual development. I would like to actually kind of switch gears a little bit right now, and return to the liveness aspect. I've got a couple of the answers provided by those of you joining us on the call today, that I'd just like to quickly read out, and then allow Mike and Alan and Fred to respond to the comments about NIST FRVT and PAD assessments. We've got one comment here that benchmarking is important, but what's even more important is how it actually works in real world customer deployments. Lots of issues equals bad, and it just works equals good, but word spreads either way. So yeah, an interesting point there about the difference between, benchmarking maybe in a lab setting and evaluations uh, of deployments in the real world. Another comment here, those assessments accelerate accuracy in biometric performance. They're very important to end users, assessments of overall value. NIST RVT has always provided excellent benchmarking for understanding performance. We've got, an attendee points out that regulatory approval is important at the beginning. And sometimes these details are a little bit lost on users. Another comment here that it's important to know the level of security and accuracy of the system. So, I mean, I think that's, a pro benchmarking and independent assessment comment. And one more that I'll just quickly read here. The standard benchmark is good. The standard benchmarks are good for increasing confidence. Um, how the 3D stereo depth camera compared against time of flight camera or structured light camera. Okay, so how do they compare, I guess? From the depth accuracy point of view, which one is better. So we've kind of cut to a question there that I would like to put to Mike. I also want to encourage everyone to fire away with questions, and we'll start getting into those in a real way in just a moment. But yeah, Mike, for one thing, on the 3D side, and then just general thoughts about these responses to the assessment question.
Yeah. I mean, we can go into this. This becomes almost a religious war when you start talking about time of flight versus structured light versus active stereo and passive stereo. So I won't.
Sure.
I'm not falling into that trap. But whoever it is, please ping me, and I'd love to have that conversation. And I'll even buy you a beer for it because it'll be fun.
100%.
The reality is that they're all different mechanisms to measure distance. And we use stereo because we're a stereo company, so we use the underlying technology of our stereo cameras to do exactly that on a more micro feature basis, as opposed to millimeter depth at 2 meters away. I need to know very specific points and relation between those points on the face. But yeah, it's fun because depending on where you are, this could be a 2-hour conversation or really quick. But one thing you're saying, there was a story that you triggered when I was around user acceptance, and I was at the airport a couple 5 months ago, I guess. I won't say which airline because that would be embarrassing, but the agent, after the second failure in a row of being able to do a biometric scan at the gate to get on the plane, there were some expletives shouted, and the thing got pointed at the sky. So that was it. And I haven't actually seen it at that airport, which I fly out of every other week since then, by that airline. So you mentioned word of mouth. The second a gate agent starts telling their other friends that are gate agents, like, this is BS, it doesn't work, you are doomed, because you got to then undo all that. And we've learned the hard way that we're really careful about setting the performance expectations, because we don't want people to overstate that to their users, because as soon as the user expects a certain level of seamlessness, like you walk in with the sunglasses and a hat on and a COVID mask, there's going to be, something's got to give, right? It does not work under every single condition. You got to set a baseline. And if that baseline's set and people can work around it, or work with it, then it can be flawless in terms of acceptance. But the second you get one person under the wrong circumstances to not get through a door and then back up a queue, then you've just torpedoed your program.
Well, and I bet that the algorithm, or at least there's a good chance the algorithm used in that case, had been through some sort of independent assessment that, probably hopefully indicated that it performed well in the lab. So
Yeah.
that, kind of dovetails with one of the comments there. Yeah, Fred or Alan, you want anything stand out or jump out to you from
I think the first comment you made on the long list that you read off, Chris, was real world acceptance and real world conditions. I've implemented tens of thousands of biometric devices in indoor facilities, outdoor facilities across the world. There are sunlight that you have to deal with in front of you and behind you. There's rain, there's weather conditions. The hardware today, especially the ones that we're putting out at One's Technology, all of our outdoor devices will be IP67, so they'll be very acceptable to the weather conditions. There's things like hoods or permanent structures, short hoods, roofs that can be put over the devices to make them more acceptable to the weather conditions. Yeah, the thing that Mike was just talking about, acceptance. I am responsible for putting in most of the biometric cameras in airports in the U.S. For biometric exit. When you leave, you have to show your face for CBP biometric exit. It's a great product because you don't have to show your boarding pass. You don't have to show your passport. You show your face, you get on the plane. When I first did this in LAX with eGates, we boarded an A380, which holds 600 seats, 600 passengers. It used to take an hour to board. We boarded it in sub 20 minutes because your face, open the gate, face, open the gate. But there has to be a mechanism where if somebody doesn't do it, you have them step out of line and don't hold up. So it's procedural. It's user flow, managing the user flow. But if you have an exception, have the exception step aside and keep it going. There's one of the problems also in the airline industry was unions. They need fewer people when they have biometrics involved. So the agents were breaking the cameras, the agents weren't using the cameras. there's a lot of factors that go into user acceptability. Some of it is artificial and some of it's real.
Very interesting. Yeah, a couple of different factors I would never have come, thought of on my own there. I'm sure very surprising to a lot of us on the call. Um, I would like to dive into some questions now. We are coming around to the hour. We may have to even go over by a minute or two here because we've got some good questions. A fairly easy one, Mike, for you off the top is the RealSense ID Pro, which I referred to at the beginning, recently launched, fully compatible with the existing RealSense ID SDK used for the F455.
Yeah, all the stuff that was in the 455 carries forward to the 500. There's capabilities in the 500 that are not backwards compatible with the 455, though. The advanced biometrics, skeletal tracking, body part classification, all the anti-tailgating stuff, that's not in the 450. And the performance is obviously different between the platforms, storage, and stuff like that. But in terms of the APIs, they are forward compatible. Yes.
Very good. We've got another question about which access control manufacturers are currently using RealSense ID, and I would imagine that we want to confine that answer a little bit, but yeah, is there anything you can tell us about your partners at this point?
I, because of NDAs, no. What I can tell you is that something like a third of the world's universe around this is going to be going this direction. So but I can't tell you who. It's just sorry, I'm under NDA.
I can give a general answer on that. In terms of my technology and what I can put on the door with a RealSense camera in it, of course, is anything that's Wigan or OSTP compatible, I can hang on a door and make it work for the most part.
It's a lot of manufacturers.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, very good. We've got a question. We're talking about facial authentication as a pure security feature, but how does convenience play into this? Ideally, a frictionless application is one where I do not need a separate card, just my face.
Whoever asked that question, I love this person because this is why I personally love using biometrics. I am tired of whipping stuff out at the airport, and I'm tired of whipping out tickets at concerts. Being able to use my face for me as an individual is a game changer. That's actually, guys, that's what drove this industry forward. It wasn't the security folks. I'll put us all in that category. We're like, no, it's all terrible. People are done with friction. And if you can go to a grocery store and pay for your stuff by just walking out, why can't I get into an airport where you have all my information in the first place? So this is a great question. But yeah, we talk about the security of it, and you're absolutely right. We should probably pivot and talk about it more as a convenience factor.
Can I just add and be a pain for you, Mike? I love this question as well because we in the access control world, we always had this idea around this active card that you just walk past doors and they go clunk, 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 and you open the doors and you don't need to get anything out of your pocket. I think this also brings in the idea of the user agency part is when do I want someone to use my face to do something? And I think that's where we need to just be smarter because you walking up to a door and someone using your face to access it or a speed gate, you are in some way giving some purpose and some agency that you wish to do that. Now, I guess again, it's about the deployment. So I'm on both sides, and I come to the idea it's just horses for courses. I think that the art of the possible is there. I think it's always a question of who do I want to allow at a certain point, and what do I as a user, when do I want to give my permission to use the data? But I think that's more of a deployment issue.
Yeah, that's why the consent's so. I mean, Freddie, you've been on this forever,
Yeah.
but the consent's so critical, right? I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
I love this question also. I think it's a blend of privacy one and security two. Do I want to use my face to get into a concert? It's not a secure event. Yes, please do. It's no friction, but I need a little bit of friction to enhance my security profile. And in some high-end security facilities, and the corporation has to be the judge of what's high-end security or higher security than lower security. Yes, a face may on its own may work, but you may want that secondary credential. As you found in the poll, privacy is the number one answer. if somebody listens to the way I explain privacy and why 1 to N is important, I think that privacy number goes down considerably as a concern because we're not storing anywhere. So it's a double-edged sword. Both are good, both are there.
Maybe just to add to that, what I do love about this question, and I also love about our answers, is we finally have the possibilities to play about with whatever route you wish to go. And I think that's the beauty that I find with the market and what we've managed to achieve is you're giving the customer choice and you're giving the customer the ability to think about that and also about their users. And thanks to the technology and the flexibility of the way it's been deployed and integrated, we can tailor that. And that's the fun bit. I don't think that was always the case in the past.
And we can go back to the government and say, look, we can do this
Right.
based on your regulations today.
Well, and that's a big part of the answer to the question that we started out with today, right? Is what's changed that makes this possible in a different way, and that choice, definitely one of the central factors there, right?
Chris,
Uh,
everything's changed in the last year. The last year, I've been in biometrics for over 20 years. Everything has changed in the last 6 months to a year. Everything has changed.
please elaborate, Fred. I mean, just spell that change
Just
out.
just as we just discussed, how you now have choices on how biometrics can be used from a
Right.
security, from a privacy perspective. You have a choice on what you want to do. The end user has a choice as to what they want to do. Um, the choices are better. The technology is much better. The algorithms are better. We're now meeting the liveness standards under ISO and everything else that comes with biometrics. All the answers are there right now, where 2, 3 years ago they weren't there.
Mhm.
And everybody's coming up with developments and technology and innovation that meets the needs of the global community for biometrics.
Yeah, about time. I want to continue. Just we've got several other good questions on this same theme. I just want to pick up one more of them, and before I do, I'll also mention that all of these questions will be passed along to Mike, Alan, and Fred. So please, let's continue these conversations following the presentation. Take these conversations onto email, onto LinkedIn, in person, at the pub, whatever, because this is all really important stuff. But one more question on this same theme. After you issue any of these for the self-sovereign biometrics, then you're always in 2FA at least. So that's, you've got that other credential. For 1FA, how many people's biometric data can you store and keep authenticating with the same accuracy? Also, how do you deal with privacy when storing all the profiles on the device? So, Mike, I'll send that over your way
Yeah,
first.
there's two answers to that question. And I hate to say it depends, but it's going to depend. Um, on the device, we do 10,000 templates. So just to be clear, it's a 512 FP16 template, so it can be up to about a kilobyte. Mask, no mask, all that jazz. So that we store about 10,000 of those on the device itself, and that's effectively instantaneous. It's about a 300 millisecond start to finish. The anti-spoofing pipeline, 5 stages, plus the plus liveness plus face recognition from like trigger to positive negative result is about 300 milliseconds, so a third of a second, right? Now that said, that's on the device. Um, we is no limitation functionally to the number of face templates that can be stored in a database off device. So whether it's direct attached to host or backhauled to server or cloud infrastructure, then it's really just vector database lookups. And there's ways to do the structure of the database to make those, frankly, even faster for lookups off the device, and it scales to hundreds of millions. So there's no functional limit. There is a trade-off in terms of performance, but that's a database conversation because at that point we're talking about big infrastructure. This isn't just a camera. Uh, but we can help you. We can walk through those with you. We've got folks that have done both ends of that bookend, what one-to-one matching, and then 1 to 100 million at a database matching.
Great, thank you, Mike. We've got another question here, which brings in another aspect. There's a comment that kind of has an implied question, and then another question. we've got one of our attendees says an attractive device and unique size and portability gives it enormous potential, but only if it integrates internet connectivity and a built-in power source (brackets batteries). So there's the implied question, and then the explicit question. We see it as particularly interesting for time and attendance monitoring. Are there any options for this with RealSense? So back to you, Mike.
Yeah, actually, we've got a bunch of partners that do time and attendance. If you want to ping me separately, I can hook you up with one of those directly. I shouldn't mention their names publicly. Sorry, guys. But yeah, and if you're designing your own, then we've actually got a bunch of partners, people like Framos and Rutronic and a bunch of others that have done work with us on developing the compute platform that wraps around it in a low cost way that does give it connectivity and basic other services to let it plug back into an application. So I can either help you find the right time and attendance player, or I can help you build one. Just shoot me a note afterwards, please.
And to further that answer, internet, no. Power, yes. Like on our handhelds, I'm not sure you can see this, but on our handhelds, it's battery powered. It's an Android device. Battery will last about 24 hours. I don't need an internet connection. If it is, well, one to N I can do on the device and store it on the device without internet. And one to one definitely doesn't need internet. It's basically scanning a QR code, a badge, or a wallet, but internet is not required.
And maybe
One of the devices. Yes.
And maybe just to add from an Apple Wallet, Google Wallet perspective, the NFC wallet will work when the battery's died. There's still, I think it's depending on your phone and the type of phone, anywhere from 4 to I think 7 hours, I think.
I've got to go back and look at the original spec, but I think our total power draw during an authentication event, and the biggest power draw is actually just activating the infrared illumination. It's like 0.04 milliwatt hour. So we sketched it out. If you stuck it on a home doorbell type of thing, then you can run for like 274 days. But again, your mileage definitely varies depending on how many times you're activating the device.
Very good. We've got a whole bunch of good questions here. I'm going to try and pick one more among them, and so I absolutely would encourage all of you who ask these questions to pursue them following the presentation. And yeah, as I say, we'll make sure that these get to Mike and Alan and Fred as well. But yeah, one question here, fairly specific. We employ facial biometric capture and hashing thereof, then bind to verified credentials for various use cases. Can these biometric hashes then be shared with edge devices like the ID Pro for facial authentication? And would a success or failure then be returned for further workflow?
Probably a longer discussion required, Mark. But the short answer is yes-ish. I hate that answer again, but let's talk about it separately because there's you'd have to match. We can't accept your hash into our device, but our template is essentially a hash in and of itself. So we we've done a bunch. I think I know where you're going with this question. We've done a bunch of work with others before on dual capture, secondary template generation, off-device template to template matching, so that way you don't have to re-enroll. But I can walk you through that later on as well.
It's definitely a 10-minute answer.
Yeah, it's probably longer than that, unfortunately.
You mean that wasn't the perfect one to pick for a 30-second
I
clip?
know for a 30-second answer.
Question, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
It was a good question, though. So thank you to Mark. And I want to thank everyone who posed questions. We are over our time, and deservedly so, because of the quality of those questions and the really interesting discussion. So I want to thank again all of you who attended and have been watching along, particularly all of you who responded to the poll and who posed these good questions. Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you, Fred, and thank you, Alan. This has been a very interesting discussion. I feel like we may have to circle back and pick it up again before too long to follow these deployments as they proliferate. So we will return again soon with another biometric update presentation on the going events in digital identity and biometrics. Until then, stay safe and have fun. Thanks, everyone.